Greetings, this is Ron from the Encyclopedia team. It is with great pleasure we have Professor Mark Runco to this interview. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
So, Professor Runco, before we dive into your research topic, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'd be happy to. Right now, I'm coming to you from Southern Oregon in the United States and the Pacific Northwest. I work at Southern Oregon University, which is here in Southern Oregon, of course, and I've been here about 4 years. Before this, I was a professor at the University of Georgia. Before that, I was a professor in California, and in fact, I started my career in Hawaii, also in the United States. I've done some work as adjunct in Europe as well. I've been fortunate enough to visit China and much of the world in the last, my career's been going on almost 40 years. I was very lucky to discover creativity early on and knew that I enjoyed it and focused on it. And so my career has been going since the early 1980s. I have a doctorate in cognitive psychology, but again, because of good fortune, I have worked on various interdisciplinary projects. So I've been able to study creativity, not just from the cognitive psychological point of view, but I've worked with geneticists, I've worked with economists, I've worked with clinicians, educators, developmental psychologists, people in business and IO psychology. So I would say that my career has been focused on creativity for years, and my own research is mostly cognitive. But in working, editing a journal, and I've co-edited a encyclopedia of creativity, I've approached that from an interdisciplinary point of view. I hope that helps.
Impressive journey you have had, traveling all the places.
Yeah, I've been very lucky.
So what is creativity in creativity research specifically, and why is it important?
Well, that's a very interesting question or set of questions. There is actually a debate in creativity about what it is. In fact, I guess I'll say several debates. When I first started studying creativity 40 years ago, there was probably a majority of the people did not think that we could study creativity scientifically. They did not think you could be objective about it. And most people tied creativity to art. And of course, art is often very subjective and tied to aesthetics. And again, not really objective and scientific. But right about the point I entered the field in the 1980s, a group of us developed techniques and also a creativity research journal, so scientific outlets for creativity. And we have been working ever since to find what parts of creativity are amenable to science and objectivity. The standard definition that is used in the scientific research looks at two things. One is originality. So the idea here is that originality is required of all creativity. Importantly, that creativity does not need to be in art. It can be in any discipline or domain. It can be in politics even. It can be in business. It could be in science or art or education. There are studies of creativity across the board, that is, across all disciplines. And the commonality is originality. This is one of the two requirements. So whatever field in which you're working, scientists believe that there must be some originality, and you can be objective about originality. Looking at something like musical production or literature and writing, a creative individual will do something which is original. They'll have original techniques or original styles. Something in the work will be original. Now, the standard definition focuses on originality, but it also requires some sort of effectiveness. Those are the two parts of the standard definition, which is by far the most common scientific approach. Effectiveness might be utility. It might be that the original idea solves a problem, so it's effective in solving a problem. It might be any sort of aptness or fit. So originality by itself is not creativity. In fact, sometimes originality by itself is crazy. But if it's originality with some sort of effectiveness, scientists believe that that is creativity. Originality and effectiveness make up creativity. Now, I should say that, again, this is debatable. There are people, including cross-cultural psychologists, who think that something is missing. Maybe some sort of authenticity, or maybe some sort of aesthetic value. Those sorts of things are hotly debated in the field, but there is a great degree of agreement about the standard definition, originality and effectiveness, and that the idea is that that applies in an interdisciplinary way across various fields. I think you may have asked why that's important, and I can certainly speak to that. I might start by trying to answer why I study creativity, but I don't have a great answer for that. When I was young, I was in my early 20s, I started to read about creativity, and it just fascinated me. And frankly, I'm not sure exactly why, but there was something there that I just thought was amazingly interesting. And I was still in school at the time, and I was just a moderate student. But when I was able to study creativity, I was off the charts because it was so fascinating to me. And of course, that's why I've made a career out of it. Now, I don't think that the reason I personally have studied it is because of its importance, but maybe because creativity is amazingly important. And again, I can take kind of a brief history or historical view. 40 years ago, people said, oh, creativity is very important for problem solving. And it is. Many of the best solutions we have to problems are creative solutions. People a little bit more recent than that realize that creativity feeds into innovation and invention. And that's certainly true. And so maybe 30 years ago, the interest in creativity for invention and innovation really started to climb. And simultaneous with that, people did realize that creativity contributes to advance, cultural advance, and especially technological advance. And of course, you know that there's been, and there still is, a technological explosion. Technology is running the world now, and more so. And advances in technology, but really advances in culture and in a broad a variety of fields are fueled by creativity. But it's actually even grander than that. It's not just creativity for problem solving, for creativity for innovation, for invention, for advance culturally and technologically. More recently, people have realized that creativity adds richness to our lives. If you don't have creative things in your life, it's boring. There isn't much texture. Things are very similar to one another rather than being different and original. So even as we just walk through our lives, creativity contributes to texture and richness and the quality of life. And one thing that I have been advancing, and I don't really know of anyone else who feels exactly like this, but in the past 15 years or so, I have started to believe that creativity, that we use it almost every moment of our lives, at least the moments in our lives when we are understanding our world. And if you think for a moment about how important it is to understand our experience, my claim that creativity is important for understanding makes creativity just of as important as anything else there is. I would even say that creativity is more important than language. And you know how important language is. Of course, I would also say that language depends on creativity. Language would be boring. We would just repeat what we've heard unless we're creative, or to quote Noam Chomsky, a famous linguist, we are generative with our language, which basically means we can say things that we haven't heard before. So I'm saying that creativity is also important for language, but I've also made the claim that creativity is more important than language. And I say that because when we understand our worlds, we are creating meaning. We don't just copy something from the environment and put it on our brain. It only goes in our brain into our cognitive system if we process it such that we create meaning out of it. So if you have an experience and you don't understand it, humans are programmed to be motivated to understand it. We invest some energy to figure out what it means. And we are, and you know, I'm using this term literally, we are creating meaning. So my point is that creativity is required for our understanding of the world. And I can't think of anything else that's more important. So creativity is really very important. And I think I've listed 5 or 6 or 7 ways here. And I've made the claim that it's more important than anything else. Maybe some of that has fed into my own interest. And, you know, I've devoted 40 years to creativity nonstop. And maybe that's why, but frankly, there's some ambiguity as to why I chose creativity and have been so interested in it.
I can really feel your passion about creativity. So what is the innovative part or creative part about your research?
Yeah. Well, I would have to say that the creativity of my research, they're small steps. You know, people sometimes make big breakthroughs. And of course, in the history of science or the philosophy of science, those are called paradigm shifts. And you know, I haven't done any of that. But when you do science, you know, you accumulate in small steps. And I have done a few things that I think have been original and effective. Some of it is with testing. I've been very interested in creativity tests, mostly because I don't think we can do good empirical work on creativity unless we have good measures of creativity. So I've spent quite a bit of time working on and refining tests, mostly tests of divergent thinking. And I've developed a few new tests of divergent thinking. One that I developed gets at the problem finding phase of creativity, which is a little bit different from the problem solving stage of creativity. So that distinction, problem solving, problem finding, has been around, but I did develop some empirical tests that work pretty well specifically for problem finding. I've done some work to look at how we score, how we quantify people's ideas and the solutions. And in fact, some of my work most recently has been with algorithms that can look at people's ideas and the algorithms so they can be scored by computer. The originality of ideas can be pretty darn accurately or objectively scored by computer. And I'm not the only one doing that work, but that's I have worked with individuals. Some of my research is on those algorithms for quantifying the originality of ideas. I have some theories that I think have contributed to the field. One of them I've just shared with you, and that is that creativity is required for meaning. I'm the one that's writing the most about that we create meaning. I'll mention one other thing, and it is a debate an interesting debate because as the field has evolved and there's been an interest in moving from a kind of humanistic, artistic view of creativity to a more scientific view, part of that movement has involved methods that look at creative products. And that's because we can be very objective about products. And by products, I mean inventions or patents or articles that you write or musical scores that you compose. We can look at a creator and what they have produced, their output, and we can often quantify it. We can count it. And that's great. But many people in this field have taken that and they've gone too far. And they've argued that creative products are the most important part of our research. I disagree. And I have written many times about the creative process being more important than the creative process. So you asked what I've done that's original, and I don't know if it's all that original. I guess it is. I'm in this debate suggesting an original perspective that we should be looking at process more than product. I don't think we can explain products unless we study process. So that's one of my theoretical contributions, or yeah, I'll just leave it at that, a theoretical contribution.
So, what do you think of the development of creativity process in the future?
Hmm. Oh, I have great optimism. It's remarkable to me what advances have occurred in the last 40 years since I've started studying the field. And I am just, I really, I am floored, to use a kind of metaphor. And I'm especially impressed by the neurosciences and what the neurosciences are contributing to our understanding of creativity. And then also, earlier I mentioned technology. I'm really interested in artificial intelligence or artificial creativity. And there was a time when I did not think that a computer could be creative. And I've kind of changed my mind. I see the advances in the field of artificial intelligence and in technology in general. And it's just amazing to me what computers can do in the direction of creativity. I don't think that they are as creative as humans yet, but we've made great strides. I'll mention that computer scientists studying creativity used to talk about the Turing test, named after Alan Turing. And the Turing test was for computers. Could a computer convince a human that it had intelligence? That test, the Turing test, which was around since the 40s, computers can do that now. There are bots that if they converse with the human doesn't know it's a computer. They're so intelligent. So computer scientists, after that solving of the Turing test, now ask, it's called the Lovelace test, Lovelace, after a British, what was she, a countess? She was one of the early individuals, along with Charles Babbage, to study computers, 1800s. They were just computational machines at that point. But way back then, she asked if a machine could originate an idea. And remember now that originality is vital for creativity. So I think she was asking if computers could be original. And she was just working with the most rudimentary machines, but she had the foresight to ask that question. So now computer scientists say that they are trying to develop artificial intelligence that will pass the Loveless test. And what that means is, can they develop a computer that will originate an idea and a human won't know that it came from a computer? And I've changed my mind. I now think that in the future, yes, a computer will be able to do that. It just fascinates me. The sciences, of course, have brought all kinds of amazing methodologies and apparatus. There is just a wonderful literature on fMRIs and what those are telling us about what the brain is doing when an individual is creating. That work, I'd say, is still very early because at this point, humans have to be in a laboratory to be studied with like an fMRI, and that takes some of the creativity out of it. They're in a laboratory. They're not in the real world doing spontaneously creative things. So at some point, hopefully the sciences will be able to study humans doing spontaneous things in the natural environment. And boy, at that point, we are going to have a very good explanation of what creativity is. We don't have it now, or I'll say where it originates, how it comes about using the human brain. And we're not there yet, but we have taken great strides. And I'm now just very optimistic that that will happen in my lifetime.
The future seems really bright for artificial intelligence, and hopefully the sci-fi movie Terminator won't come true.
I have that thought. You're right.
Alright, so Professor Runco, we wish you and your team the best of luck on your future research, and thank you again for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for asking.